What's up, nerds? So the MCU has done the craziest thing ever with its most recent movie, Fantastic Four: First Steps. And it occurs to me that a lot of you out there don't realize just how crazy it actually is. You're wondering, well, Danny, what's the crazy thing that they did with this movie? Is it actually Galactus? No, I don't mean Galactus. But there's another cosmically powered being in this film you've probably overlooked. I'm talking about the baby. That's right, Sue and Reed Richards' baby. This kid isn't just overpowered. He's beyond Omega level classification. A universe shaper mutant who makes gods sweat. But how did this adorable bouncing baby boy grow up to be Marvel's secret architect? Strap in, nerds, because I am about to tell you. I'm about to make you an expert on all things Franklin Richards. Comics and powered by the Red 5 Network. For more, visit red5.bio.link. Honestly, this is probably the most difficult breakdown I have ever done. What's up, nerds? Welcome back to the channel. For those who are new, my name is Danny, and this is Comics and today is Comics and Cosmetics. This show is where I break down your favorite comic book characters, TV shows, movies, what have you, while doing my makeup at the same time. And if you are interested in the products that I'm using, check the description below, because I have done the hard work of linking every single thing that I'm using on my face down there for you. Before we go any further, I hope you have done me the absolute solid of hitting that like button, subscribing if you are new, and ringing the notification bell to get notified whenever I'm back with even more of this nerdy nonsense. Maybe consider becoming a member of the channel. With that being said, let's get in there. This is probably the most difficult breakdown I've ever had to write. In fact, I've spent the last several weeks reading so many Fantastic Four comics, watching videos that other people have made, and writing and rewriting my breakdown by hand and typing out multiple times so I make sure I get it right, because Franklin is a wild and crazy character. You know how comics love to be rebooted and rebooted again. In the case of Franklin, they basically lean into that and use that to their advantage, so to speak. And you'll see what I'm talking about later. But this kid is so powerful. He is the most powerful human mutant, human mutate in the entire Marvel universe. Why did I call him human mutant, human mutate? You'll find out. Just keep that in your back pocket. Franklin Benjamin Richards is the wildly overpowered reality warping son of Dr. Reed Richards and Sue Storm, so Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. He's often described as a universe shaper and a mutant with power beyond Omega level classification, which basically means he can do anything he wants. He first appeared in Fantastic Four Comics annual number 6 in November of 1968. He was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby when Stan was like, well, you know, Sue Storm and Reed Richards are now married. It only makes sense that the natural evolution of that relationship would be that they have children. Now, unlike other mutants who develop their powers and abilities when they hit puberty, Franklin's developed in the womb in the womb. Like he was moving things and giving his mama premonitions before he was even born. Like it was a whole problem. I mean, this created a huge ordeal for his parents. You know, his father had to make many difficult decisions when it came to raising him. And that caused problems in his marriage to Franklin's mother, Sue Storm, who was like, how dare you? But I mean, she kind of got it, but at the same time, it's like, I just don't feel right about this. What didn't she feel right about? We'll get to that. I mean, seriously, you have this child who has these absolutely immense and unstable abilities. Reed wanted to try and prevent them from interfering with Franklin having a normal childhood. Like, imagine having a toddler that could fart you into the next county or turn your house into a giant donut. I mean, I had a kid who would take his diaper off at night and paint the walls with his poo. I had to duct tape that diaper on. I might be open to the idea of discussing mental blocks, okay? I might. Like, Franklin was going to be something totally new for comic books. He was very much going to be geared towards the younger readers, and he was going to be a character that the readers could grow along with. They were going to grow up with Franklin because at the time, Marvel Comics actually happened in real time. They published in real time. Time passed in real time. It happened in the present time. The characters aged. Mm-hmm. Remember that. Does that actually play out as planned? We'll see. So before Franklin even born, like I said earlier, there were things that were noticeably different than any other normal pregnancy. By this time, the Fantastic Four were the Fantastic Four. They had gone into space, they had encountered the cosmic radiation, and Sue Storm had developed her ability to turn invisible, become the Invisible Girl, developed her abilities with the force fields, developing the force fields. Mr. Fantastic could stretch. Ben Grimm was the Thing, and Johnny Storm, Sue Storm's brother, was the Human Torch. There were some concerns like, is this kid going to, be affected by that? And Sue's powers on the fritz and having these crazy dreams. Yeah, we think it might. So Reed, who's obviously very concerned about this, does some tests. He runs some tests because that's who he is as a person. He's a scientist who runs tests. And he discovers that the cosmic radiation that changed them was still in Sue's blood. Like, duh. No shit, Sherlock. You're the smartest man alive. Like, really? The thing that changed her and made her go invisible and make force fields is still in her blood? Shock. But it's still in her blood, and therefore the babies. And it's causing this huge problem. It's made her unstable. The energies are like battling inside her. And it's discovered later, kind of retconned much later in the comics, that Franklin the fetus is kind of inadvertently feeding off of Sue's life force in a sense. So these unbalanced energies are all inside Sue. And Reed is worried that if he doesn't fix it soon, that Sue and the baby will not survive. Reed discovers what can help, this antimatter cosmic radiation that's found in the negative zone. He's got to go get it, right? Negative zone is this very old, constantly in the state of entropy place that's ruled by these warlords. And it's filled with all these crazy, very strange alien looking creatures. Normal humans cannot survive there. It's toxic to normal humans. And the lord of all the negative zone is this bug robot looking thing known as a nihilist. And a nihilist only really cares about immortality. He just wants to live forever. And how he does that is by killing other living beings and then kind of transferring that living energy to himself via this device known as the cosmic control rod, which he wears on his chest. So because it's a dangerous trip, difficult to get to this place, Reed has these special fancy harnesses made for him and Johnny and Ben. And while Sue is on bed rest, the three of them hop on over to the negative zone. Like as soon as they land in the negative zone, some of Annihilus' scavengers find them, scoop them up and take them to Annihilus, and Annihilus wants to experiment on them. He's never seen anything like them before. He's like, what are these? Poke, poke, poke. Well, as soon as Reed spots the cosmic control rod on his chest, he's like, that's it. That's what I need. I need that thing on his chest and I can save Sue. So they knock out Annihilus, take all his stuff and try to take off, but they don't have their harnesses. This cracks me up. Listen, this is what I love about the early comics, like especially Silver Age, because I mean, they were pretty much written for kids and they get pretty trite and silly. Bunch of explosions and fights. Craziness later, Annihilus is chasing them and they're like, listen, we need our harnesses back. And Flynn realizes what I really need is the cosmic antimatter energy inside the cosmic control rod. And it just so happens I've got this little glass tube conveniently right here in my pocket. If I could get the energy out of the cosmic control rod and into this tube, like we could trade the device for our harnesses and we could Vominos on out of here. And Annihilus, like I said, he's chasing them like they're both on these rocks flying through, and Annihilus pops up and he's like, oh, but you can't. There's a nozzle on the end right there. You can get it out. It's right there. Oh, convenient. Annihilus actually helps them get the energy out of the cosmic control rod, and they trade the cosmic control rod back to Annihilus, and he gives them the harnesses so they can leave the negative zone. Now, I've seen a lot of breakdowns about Franklin Richards over the last several weeks, and every single one of them, all of them except one breakdown, specifically says that he specifically needed the device to fix Sue. And that is not true. Like, that is not what happened in the comics, and you can look that up for yourself. So in fact, this breakdown, I'm going to give you as best a cliff notes as I possibly can, because if I was to actually sit here and give you every single detail about Franklin Richards, we would literally be here for 4 hours. I am probably longer. I'm not kidding. And folks, I just do not have that in me, and you don't have it in you to sit and watch me for 4 hours. So yeah, you can judge for yourself if I'm telling you the truth. Check my work. Read the comics. I highly encourage you read comics. Read comics every day. Read them for funsies. Read them to check my work. I don't care what reason you have to read the comic books, but seriously, read the comic books. So he did not actually need the cosmic control rod device to fix Sue. He needed the energy inside the cosmic control rod to balance Sue. So he gets back just in time, Sue's in labor, and fixes Sue, balances the energy inside of her just in time for her to give birth to their bouncing baby boy. And a few issues later, they name their son Franklin after Sue's father, who actually gave his life to save them, and after their best friend and colleague, Ben Grimm, who also happily accepted being the baby's godfather. Now, Sue Storm was never going to be a stay-at-home mom. She is absolutely 1,000% a mom first. She's a mom and a wife. She's family-oriented first. When it came time for Sue to return to her work as the Invisible Girl, they needed to find a nanny. And who better to nanny your precious bundle of joy than an ancient, well-dressed, I might add, cat-loving witch who resides on Whisper Hill, who goes by the name of Agatha Harkness. That's right, Agatha Harkness's first appearance in comic books was as Franklin Richards' nanny. And if you want to see that story, that breakdown, I'll link that below. It's on my channel as well. That's like the third breakdown I ever did. Like, who else is going to be better to nanny a baby that can project his dreams or fart his whole world out of existence than this unknowably ancient witch? She knew who and what Franklin was, and she had already planned to be of help. The two ended up bonding like right away, and they ended up becoming quite inseparable. For the longest time in Marvel Comics, Franklin's powers were entirely attributed to the cosmic control rod, or the energy inside the cosmic control rod. He was going to grow up to be a second Galactus, and that doesn't necessarily change, but the source of his power and his power levels change all of the time, like all of the time. And his relationship with Galactus becomes pretty intricate and intrinsic. We'll talk more about that later. As a small child, though, in the early comics, like in the 70s and the early 80s, his powers were pretty basic, and they would show up kind of randomly in bursts. Like in Fantastic Four number 130, he uses his psionic powers to subconsciously alert the unconscious Ben Grimm that the Frightful Four were attacking the Fantastic Four and trying to kidnap them. Like, they had knocked out Ben Grimm, but little toddler Franklin wakes him up. For years, that's exactly how it would go. Just those brief moments of little bursts of abilities. It wouldn't be until later that Franklin's powers and his role in the Marvel Universe would grow exponentially. And with the way the writers would reboot series, blink things in and out, that they would really change how they used Franklin, not just as a character, but as a plot device. Now, his childhood went about as smoothly as one would expect the superpowered child of the most famous superpowered couple in the world would go. He was kidnapped multiple times, attempted to be kidnapped like several more. Some of the people that kidnapped him were Kraven the Hunter, Doctor Doom, Annihilus, and Mephisto. Annihilus was still a tad butthurt from Reed kind of crashing into his home turf and basically ransoming his cosmic control rod. And he still stole stuff from him. Like, Reed, Johnny, and Ben crash into the negative zone, steal the energy from his cosmic control rod, and then bounce. Annihilus was like, listen, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to tag you back. And he does. Annihilus shows up into their universe and proceeds to up. He kidnaps little Franklin, and basically, by way of this cosmic ray gene transmuter, he prematurely unleashes the full potential of Franklin's psionic abilities. He basically turns him into a giant ray gun. And when the Fantastic Four show up to rescue him, the energy that is unleashed is so immense and uncontrollable, it threatens to kill every living thing in the solar system. So Reed feels like he is justified and has no choice but to shoot his own son with this experimental antimatter weapon and puts his son in a coma. Now, Sue, as Franklin's mom, is not too thrilled about this. She feels like there could have been another way to handle this situation. I mean, everything in the universe was going to die, and there really wasn't a whole lot of time. So don't think Reed had much of a choice, but also as a mom, I can kind of see why she would be so upset. Her son was in a coma for months. Now, this is me from the future, which is pretty appropriate if you ask me for a Franklin Richards breakdown. They didn't tell you how he woke up from the coma. Ultron 7 is how he woke up. Ultron 7 attacks, and he puts out this extremely powerful psychic blast, so powerful that it wakes Franklin Richards up from his coma. It startles Franklin awake. And just like any other toddler who gets startled, he has a tantrum. And this tantrum was so powerful, it destroyed Ultron 7. Crazy. Crazy. The next chapter in Franklin's life takes on Marvel's devil and accidental premature adulthood. Was Franklin Richards the catalyst that allowed for the birth of Scarlet Witch's children, Billy and Tommy? You tell me in the comments below. So Reed had created Herbie, humanoid experimental robot, B-type integrated electronics. I know it doesn't really roll off the tongue. That's why they just said Herbie. They liked the name Herbie. Okay, they liked the name Herbie, and they had to come up with a reason to call this robot Herbie. Herbie was pretty much a lab assistant for Reed, but also a companion and a babysitter for Franklin. And he was supposed to also kind of keep an eye out on Franklin's mutant powers. Reed was working in the lab, not quite sure what Johnny was doing. Sue was doing an interview with this absolute harpy, Barbara Walker, who is, I mean, just doing what harpies do and trying to make Sue look like being a mom is a terrible thing for women to do. Like, wow, eat a Barbara. It just really. This is Fantastic Four number 245. Any Fantastic Four nerd is going to tell you this is one of the best Fantastic Four comics out there, especially when it comes to Franklin, because this is the first time that his reality warping powers are on display. The first time we really see him use his powers is when he wakes up Ben Grimm. But the first time he uses his big boy powers, he uses the reality warping powers, is in Fantastic Four number 245. So this is a wild one, okay? Sue Storm is doing this television interview. Reed is in the lab. Johnny is doing Johnny things. And Ben is kind of babysitting Franklin, but he's like not doing a very good job because he's not in the room with him. He's left him with Herbie and he's kind of tossed him a Rubik's Cube. Like, here you go, play with this with the TV on. Something my mom used to call the electronic babysitter. Yeah. Like, this kid is, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old, and Ben's like, here, have a Rubik's Cube, because that's what preschoolers play with. That's what a 3-year-old plays with, Rubik's Cubes. So here's little Franklin playing with the Rubik's Cube, and obviously he's getting frustrated with it. He like kind of reality warps it into working. Like, I was getting frustrated, but I made it work. And then the TV, he's got Leave It to Beaver on, and Wally says to him, you know, when are you gonna grow up? And the second Franklin hears that, like subconsciously something snaps in his brain, like, yeah, I want to grow up. And then Herbie like is like, warning, warning, warning. There's this huge explosion, like blows up. And then in the aftermath of this explosion, Franklin, the 3-year-old, is gone. And in his place stands this tall, gorgeous, Jesus-looking, long blonde hair, long blonde beard dude in Franklin's ripped up shorts. Like, he grew into the clothes and ripped him up. He's just standing there like, oh, shit. When this happens, his understanding of the physics of the universe, his understanding of his powers themselves completely unlocked. He has access to the full potential of his abilities. However, he has no idea who he is, how he got there, where he is, nothing, no personal information whatsoever. It's wiped from his mind. So, of course, when this happens, finally people come to investigate. Like, Ben's like, whoa, what happened? What happened? Grown-up Franklin is super confused and he wants answers. And as soon as Ben and Reed come up to him like, who the fuck are you? What are you doing here? Grown-up Franklin's like, yeah, who am I? What am I? Tell me who I am. But they don't know who he is. They only know Franklin as a little boy. They don't know what to tell him. They're just like, You tell me, homie. I don't know who you are. So they obviously attack him. I mean, they're used to people trying to break into the Baxter building to try and kidnap. I mean, obviously, Reed, you need to work on your security protocols because they suck. They cannot defeat this dude. Like, he takes them out. But when he does, he reaches into their minds trying to find clues, answers to who he is, because he thinks they are purposely hiding that information from him. But of course, they don't know who the fuck he is. Again, they know him as a little boy, so he can't find the information he's looking for. He doesn't know he was just a little boy. Sue, she finishes her interview and she heads back home. When she gets to the Baxter building, she sees that the whole thing is completely locked down. She can't get in. She's like, what is going on? So she has to use her powers to basically float up to the top with a force field and break in. She finds the unconscious bodies of her husband and Ben Grimm. Here's voices, so she goes and she turns herself invisible, shifts in viz, and follows the voices. And this leads her to an open door, and she sees this tall blonde stranger holding her brother by the throat, and he's like in full flame. So Sue is watching this go down. She's like, who is this guy? How can he hold Johnny? What has happened, and she doesn't realize it, is that he has just gone into Johnny's mind and searched for any information about himself, couldn't find it, so he wipes Johnny's mind and drops him to the ground unconscious. And Sue's like, holy f-. As she stands there aghast in this ajar door, grown-up Franklin looks over there and notices her, and she's like, oh, he can see me when I'm invisible, and she like takes off. And that should have been her first red flag, because baby Franklin could always sense her when she was invisible. He chases her through the Baxter building, and I mean through the Baxter building, and it's like, it doesn't even matter to him. He's just gliding through these walls and doors and stuff like they don't even exist to him. She sees him do this. She sees him like go through walls and she still tries to jump behind him and throw her trench coat over his head and then tie it off at the neck with her belt and then like Scooby-Doo run away. And he just kind of like, really? And the coat melts down over his head and becomes just like a snazzy cloak. On to Sue's plan B, which is she throws up a big old force field, which this guy, grown-up Franklin, kind of looks at like a curiosity. He's like, oh, what's this? And he reaches up and touches it and then starts to push through it. And this causes this extremely painful feedback for Sue. Well, after another explosion and more chasing, Sue makes it outside of the building. Eventually, grown-up Franklin follows her. He gets to the top of the Baxter building and just kind of gently levitates down to the street level like some blonde Jesus figure. Grown-up Franklin just grabs Sue by the shoulders and he's like, show me who I am. Tell me, why is there a hole in my head? Why is my head so empty? I feel like it shouldn't be empty. Why is it empty? Tell me what I need to know. This whole time that this has been going on, this whole chase and everything, Sue has been thinking to herself, there's something oddly familiar about this guy, and I can't quite put my finger on it. Something about the way he talks, his speech patterns, his phrasing, just something really, really, really familiar about it. While he's got her by the shoulders and he's basically shaking her and yelling at her, like, tell me everything, it all kind of hits her suddenly, like horrifyingly. She realizes she's looking at him so close that he pretty much looks like Reed, but with her coloring, and that the way he's talking is very childlike. She just kind of stutters like, Franklin. And as soon as she says that, as soon as she says his name, the shock of this, like he's being hit with this wave of memory. It makes him stumble back, like he can't hold himself upright. He gets all of his memories back and he kind of looks up at her. He's like, Mommy? Suddenly, he's just super childlike. Like he has all this understanding of the universe and physics, mostly thanks to the fact that he was in his dad's mind. And his dad's a super scientist, but he's very much still the mind of a child. When this happens, Reed, Johnny, and Ben wake up and they come running out to the street level. And Sue immediately explains to them, wait, it's Franklin. I don't know how, but this is our child. And Franklin recounts what he remembers up until this point. Well, talking to his father, they come to the conclusion that he is not emotionally ready to manage these kinds of powers, like this level of power. He's still just an itty bitty little boy. It's not something he is capable of handling like you think. They're also worried about how to get him back to his actual childlike self, because Reed is worried that stuffing this amount of power back down into his tiny child body would cause it to explode like little Herbie did. And, we don't want that. Franklin says that he's pretty sure he knows what to do. He just needs a minute. He wants to go talk to Ben. So he goes over to Ben. He tells him that he wants to heal him. He wants to fix him. See, Reed tried to cure him, which Reed tried to cure him so many times, and it always goes wrong. I mean, really, it was just Marvel's way of trying out new designs for the Thing, and nobody ever liked them. This is really the first time that Franklin is used by Marvel writers as a plot device. Franklin goes over to Ben and he tells him that he wants to fix his father's mistake. And he goes into Ben's head and basically figures out that Ben doesn't really need or really desire to be completely human, because Reed never really truly understood the actual internal character development that occurred with Ben when he became the Thing. There's a lot of stuff that went on. When Franklin goes into his head, he sees what Ben really wants. And then there's this huge flash of light. When the light disappears, Ben Grimm the Thing is back to his OG design, that kind of smooth rock look. And Franklin is back to his child self. Not just his child self, but depowered. No reality warping powers at this time. But also, Reed is like, I think now is a good time to do something called psychic inhibitors. He puts these psychic inhibitors in his son to keep him from doing stuff like that again, and also help him have some semblance of a normal life. Putting the psychic inhibitors on him, I get why they did that. I mean, not just so that he could have some kind of a normal life, but seriously, how do you parent this child? Like, before you really place any harsh judgment on Reed and Sue, think about it. This kid could turn you into a booger if you don't give him a cookie, okay? And he won't even mean to. Everything he has done at this point, none of it was intentional. He had no idea he was doing it at all. Around this time, in Fantastic Four 267, Sue gets pregnant with a second child. However, when she goes into labor, there's a huge problem. It doesn't go well. And they actually have the help of Dr. Doom. Unfortunately for everyone involved, the baby doesn't make it. And this is some really heavy stuff that Fantastic Four deals with. Because of Franklin's incredibly powerful psionic abilities, which cannot be completely suppressed with Reed's psychic inhibitors, he's able to sense his mother's pain. Like, he can understand he had a baby sister and now he doesn't. He pretty much experiences it vicariously through his mother. In Fantastic Four number 277, the Lord of Marvel Hell, Mephisto, enters the chat, and he kidnaps Franklin to blackmail the Fantastic Four into stealing some stuff for him. But he knows how powerful Franklin is. Like, he can practically smell it on him. So he keeps him locked in this like diamond cocoon, unconscious, while he waits. Through the help of Agatha and Doctor Strange, the Fantastic Four go to hell to rescue Franklin. Franklin wakes up. He yells no at Mephisto and defeats him by shattering him into several pieces across the cosmos. Conveniently, at that precise moment, Wanda is enjoying her lovely honeymoon with her synthezoid husband in New Jersey, and she's at the moment exactly saying, I just wish we could have babies. And while those pieces of Mephisto's soul are floating above her in the ether, she subconsciously, very similar to how Franklin does things, snatches them out of the air, puts them in her womb, and magically makes Billy and Tommy Maximal. Though Franklin and Agatha did have that very tight familial bond, Agatha had to move on. Franklin moved back in permanently with his parents at the Baxter Building. If Reed, and Sue for that matter, wanted Franklin to have a normal childhood, does that mean this kid ever got to do normal kid things? Did he ever go to school? Did he ever make friends? Like, especially his own age? Like, did Reed make it a point to spend time with his son, like quality time? What kind of childhood would this kid have? And exactly how long was childhood supposed to last for him? Because remember, when he was created in 1968, he was intended to be a character that the child readers would grow up with. Here we are in the 80s. We're at like mid 80s now, and he's still like 4 or 5 years old. Clearly that's not happening, right? There's something wonky going on here. So even though Reed put these psychic inhibitors on his child, he wasn't going to let anyone know that he's basically bypassing them. He's using them to astral project himself long distances, and he's now able to actually see multiple possible probability powers. He uses these abilities to join a preteen superhero team known as Power Pack. He even gets his own code name, Tattletale. None of the parents were aware that the Power Kids, who were Alex, Julie, Jack, and Katie, had any powers whatsoever. I mean, really, nobody knew that Franklin had access to his powers either, let alone that any of these kids had formed their own super cool little super team. But here these kids were jaunting across the galaxy on their own, going to alien planets, solving problems. They even made friends with a chameleon, which is a horse-looking alien race, named Whitemane. And Franklin got pretty close with Whitey. He really liked it. They became buddies. It's in this era that you really start seeing them use that mutant word pretty heavy with Franklin. Again, up until this point, they were really attributing his powers to that cosmic control rod, or the energy inside the cosmic control rod. Now you're seeing him as mutant and proud, just really flat out declaring him as one of the muties. These comics saw Franklin finally having his own adventures, making friends, stories and stuff without the rest of the Fantastic Four, which was really good for him as a character, and it made for some cutesy little stories for younger readers. However, where the were his parents? Seriously! They were off doing science stuff and superhero things, of course, and they were living at Avengers headquarters, the Avengers mansion. They had actually gotten pretty tight with the Power family. You know, they became friends. Reed and Sue decide that it may be a good idea that Franklin actually live with the Power family for a while. Might be good for him to not live at a superhero headquarters and maybe experience a normal family for a bit. Basically, they don't have to take care of their kid. But also, they're not considering the Power family in this thing, you know? Like, the Power family already has 4 kids, okay? They have 4 kids. That's a lot of kids. Ask me how I know. And on top of it, you're going to give them a 5th child, not just a 5th child, but a child that can randomly, spontaneously age himself into an adult with amnesia that can go through walls and conjure explosions and wipe your mind. Like, they are not prepared for this. This will be great for Franklin. And it actually was. It's probably the happiest time in Franklin's childhood is living with the Power family. And it was also Franklin's first taste, first experience in what it could have been like having siblings. And that was amazing for him. He was an only child. He was a lonely child. So he's a New York City lonely boy. So this was great for him. It really was. Fictional and publication wise, this was the happiest time in Franklin Richards' life. You know, speaking of first time experiencing siblings and being empathetic to his mother's loss of his younger sister, this all comes up later when he basically makes a sister for himself. That's another one to keep in your back pocket. If Franklin Richards at this point represents anything, then it most definitely represents generational trauma. Reed is most definitely the child of neglect. His father, Nathaniel Richards, was never around. He built a time machine when Reed was a child and fucked off. He discovered this parallel dimension and he's like, oh, these parallel dimension people, they need my help in rebuilding their world. I'm going to stay and help them. There's a child at home which would be just as fulfilling. I'm going to do this instead. And later, Jonathan Hickman will really expand on that because in the earlier comics, you know, in the 80s and stuff, they don't really expand on Nathaniel at all. But around the late 80s, we do get some Nathaniel Richards action. Getting bored with the utopia he's basically created instead of raising his child, he decides to go check out his world's future, and it ain't great. It's revealed that one possible future, his grandson Franklin will hook up with Scott Summers and Jean Grey's daughter, Rachel Summers, and make an evil baby by the name of Hyperstorm. Hyperstorm will become this unstoppable villain, a mutant capable of drawing virtually limitless energy from hyperspace itself. So Nathaniel planned to zip on back in time, abduct his very young grandson Franklin, and replace him with a teenage version of him that he's already raised and trained and goes by the code name Psylord. And the plan was to screw up the time so that he and Rachel Summers wouldn't hook up. Unfortunately, his great-grandson, Hyperstorm, already saw this coming and already had it all worked out to switch Psylord and young Franklin back. So it happens anyway. Even though his plan was thwarted, this version of Nathaniel Richards vows to stick around-ish in a kind of, you know, I'm going to watch from afar capacity, to be this loyal protector of his family, kind of look out for him and stuff. He continues to appear in different timelines to kind of look out for and help Franklin along the way. And this makes him, I don't really want to say heroic, but, you know, somewhat a mythic figure in the family, if not questionable. But I promised you, nigh all-powerful, right? Where's the all-powerfulness? When does it get really crazy? Because we haven't got really crazy yet. I mean, him aging himself up is pretty crazy, but it's not really crazy. I promise I'm getting there. It takes some setting up, so respect the narrative, okay? Did you know that Franklin Richards took on the combined might of Professor X and Magneto as a child and then created a universe? And again, here we are. Franklin is still a kid, still a child. In my honest, nerdy opinion, Franklin didn't get really interesting until 1996. Until Onslaught. If you recall, I did mention that at some point, Franklin actually becomes a plot device for Marvel writers. Now, they did use him previously to kind of reset the Thing's design. Well, now they're really using him as a plot device. In DC Comics, when things get convoluted and messy, they have a crisis event to clean things up. In Marvel, they call Franklin Richards. Onslaught was an incredibly powerful psychic being that was created from the combination of the dark and violent impulses of Professor X and Magneto. In a moment of desperation, Professor X tried to suppress Magneto's rage, and his mind absorbed a significant portion of Magneto's violent and hateful psyche in the process. The combination of dark thoughts and psychic power created an independent psychic entity known as Onslaught. Onslaught later gained physical form, becoming a massive, technologically enhanced cyborg. He then would feed off the other mutant heroes. Onslaught could control minds, project psychic energy, manipulate reality, as well as draw on vast amounts of mutant energy. Onslaught eventually launched a major assault on the superhero community, forcing Earth's heroes, including the X-Men and the Avengers and Fantastic Four, to unite against him. The final battle was absolutely devastating, with many heroes seemingly perishing while trying to stop Onslaught's plan. Following a battle where Onslaught's armor is destroyed, he becomes a being of pure psychic energy and requires more power to fully evolve. He targets the extraordinarily powerful young Franklin Richards, and he tries to lure him in by projecting an image of a little boy calling himself Charles. This manipulation culminates in Onslaught taking Franklin away after a confrontation with the Fantastic Four, Avengers, and other heroes. By using the Charles construct, Onslaught succeeds in getting close enough to Franklin to ultimately capture him, adding Franklin's powers to his own. Onslaught successfully absorbs Franklin's reality-bending powers, making him more powerful than ever. He then unleashes an electromagnetic pulse all over Manhattan. Have we learned anything from Marvel Comics? Don't live in New York. Stick to the Midwest. Reed realizes that the Thing is a psychic machine. It can be overloaded. It can be weakened. All of the heroes, mutant and non-mutant, must go into Onslaught's psychic form. Reed had the stunning idea that the non-muties could actually weaken it. All of the heroes sacrifice themselves, allowing the X-Men to defeat Onslaught. Basically, this was Marvel as a publication realizing in 1996 the only comics that were actually selling was X-Men and Spider-Man. Unbeknownst to anyone, little bitty Franklin instinctively uses his immense, unconscious, psionic, and reality warping abilities. Very absolute last second, he creates a tiny pocket dimension and teleports the seemingly deceased heroes into it, saving them from oblivion. He goes around like carrying this pocket dimension around, but he doesn't exactly know what it is. He just knows it's this little blue ball, and he knows he needs to keep it with him. He needs to keep it safe. But in reality, it is pocket dimension where he has saved all the dead heroes. It is the storyline that has sparked the theory, is Franklin Richards the secret author of the Marvel Universe? Is he really the one controlling everything? Did you hear the one about the little boy who created a universe and annoyed the actual creators of the universe? Immediately after Onslaught, Franklin is taken in by the mutant team Generation X. Parents, the Avengers, and virtually everyone are seemingly dead. So he's got nowhere else to go. Generation X takes him in, and he lives at their campus. Unconsciously, Franklin uses his little blue ball pocket universe and makes a little playground for himself and some friends. Now, he lives with a couple of other friends, like Artie Maddox and Leech. Leech is actually a super powerful mutant, and I don't know why they don't go into more detail about him. He can shut off anyone's mutant power, but he creates this little pocket universe with his, what he calls the Charles Ball. And I'll tell you why. To cope with this trauma. He's just lost all of his family and friends. And he deals with it with the Charles Ball. Man-Thing, the empathetic swamp creature that acts as the guardian to the nexus of all realities located in the Florida Everglades, because that's where you would put that. Mm-hmm. Howard the Duck, Tana Nile, a warrior woman who once helped Thor, and like I said, Artie Maddox and Leech, they all hang out with him in this ball. And it's in this mini series in between Onslaught and the next thing called Daydreamers. As the Daydreamers go on these adventures, they begin to investigate the mysterious Charles Ball. They experience the Never Never Narnazibia. It's this bizarre alternate dimensional realm that accesses other realms that represents Franklin Richards' subconscious and the manifestation of his unaddressed trauma. This surreal world is the result of Franklin's reality warping powers, which he uses unconsciously as a coping mechanism following the supposed deaths of his parents and everyone else during Onslaught. Man-Thing is drawn to strong emotions because he's an empath. He acts as a living portal to this reality. And as the group travels through this world, they are forced to confront the hidden fears and psychological issues of Franklin. Like, he is way more powerful than we could have ever thought before. This is the first time we start to really understand just how powerful Franklin is. He is creating worlds within worlds, subconsciously, to deal with trauma. Imagine if he could consciously do this stuff. Like, it would be mind-blowing. Ultimately, Franklin's guilt over his parents' apparent deaths caused him to release the heroes he had unknowingly trapped within the Charles Ball. The counter Earth realm was instantly created, and the inhabitants did not experience true sequential history. Instead, they were reborn into new lives with rewritten pasts, retaining no memory of their previous existence on Earth 616. Many of these retold origins, such as the Fantastic Four gaining their powers in space differently, were altered to modernize them for the mid-1990s market. The heroes were not alone in this universe either. Franklin populated the world with recreations of his favorite heroes and foes, kind of like a kid drawing pictures of his favorite TV shows and comic books. Some of these individuals were versions of the 616 counterparts, while others, like the Young Allies, were unique to this pocket universe. In the battle with Onslaught, the Hulk and Bruce Banner were split into two separate entities. Banner was transported to the pocket universe and became a new Hulk, while the Hulk entity remained on Earth 616. Later, the Celestials took notice. They are the ones who actually make planets and beings. They're actually born from planets too. They like plant their seeds, eggs, if you will, inside planets. They're not the tippy top brass. They're not God when it comes to the universe in Marvel, but they're definitely management in the terms of gods in Marvel. They were made by the one above all, who is absolutely aware of Franklin. And Franklin definitely got their attention. They refer to him as beyond Omega level mutant classification. They know him, and they had deemed his creation a threat to the cosmos. The celestial Ashema, the listener, confronted him and told him that he had to pick one. The greater multiverse could not sustain both of these realities existing on top of one another, so one had to be destroyed. Well, Franklin freaked out. The thought was too much for this child to handle. He just went through the worst trauma ever, and he hasn't exactly had a great childhood up until this point anyway. And now he has to decide, am I going to kill the OG Marvel universe, or am I going to kill the Heroes Reborn universe? Because this is what this continuity is called. It's called the Heroes Reborn. It was too much for him. And so he panics and he bolts. He's so panicked that he doesn't see this cliff and he plummets off of it. Ashema rescues him, but the only way she can rescue him, the only way she can save his life is by merging consciousness with him. This actually gave Ashema, the listener, a new perspective on life and death, and she begins to change her views on humanity. With this new perspective, Ashema and Franklin actually broker a compromise to save both realities. Earth 616 heroes were able to return to their home reality, and Ashema used her own power to house Franklin's Counter-Earth, becoming its protector. Counter-Earth eventually was placed in orbit around Earth 616 on the opposite side of the sun, and then Marvel pretty much forgot it ever existed in the first place. Already, Franklin has had this insane and convoluted life. It couldn't get any crazier, right? Wrong. So wrong. In fact, this kid is just getting started. This is like just the beginning. Even though his powers are pretty depleted after the Heroes Reborn event, Franklin still has some juice. Did you want more? Because there's more. How about helping his mom get pregnant and resurrecting a dead Galactus? After your character is shown to be nigh all-powerful and resurrecting thousands from oblivion, I mean, where do you go from there? How do you continue to write this character that can do all of these things? Doesn't it just make shit too easy? Like, you can't solve problems with this character because all he can do is just done. What do you do? Where do you go from there? So immediately after the Fantastic Four's return from Heroes Reborn, a time-displaced Valeria Von Doom appears at Pier 4. This teenage girl claims to be the daughter of Sue Storm and Dr. Doom from an alternate universe, a consequence of Franklin Richards' unconscious use of his powers to save his sister. This event not only gave Franklin a sister, but also set the stage for major developments that reshaped the entire Richards family. So following Sue Storm's miscarriage in 1984, Franklin instinctively used his nascent uncontrollable powers to retrieve his stillborn sister from the time stream and transport her to an alternate universe where she could be born and raised by a heroic Dr. Doom and Sue Storm. See, in that reality, Reed Richards dies. Like, she's the biological child of Sue and Reed, but he dies, and she marries a heroic Dr. Doom, and he raises Valeria as his own child, hence her last name being Von Doom. Got it? Now, Sue is like, I married who? Oh, she like Scarlett O'Hara's over this, but she gets to see what her daughter would be like. After arriving in the main Marvel universe, Valeria initially introduces herself as Marvel Girl, a hero with energy manipulating powers in a costume that looks a lot like Dr. Doom's. Her arrival was an absolute shock to everyone, especially Sue, who was absolutely horrified that a version of her would marry a version of Vic. Valeria's arrival coincides with the imminent threat of the cosmic entity Abraxas, personification of destruction, who was, shock and surprise, dead set on destroying the multiverse. After the Silver Surfer turned his master's machinery against him and basically starved him to death, Galactus, the embodiment of balance in the universe, died. After his death, the destructive entity Abraxas was unleashed on the multiverse. After killing the Silver Surfer, Abraxas immediately began hunting down and killing alternate versions of Galactus across different realities while searching for the Ultimate Nullifier. The Ultimate Nullifier is one of the most powerful and dangerous artifacts in all of the Marvel Universe, capable of nullifying or erasing anything from existence, and it is inherently perilous to use because as an insufficiently focused wielder risks nullifying themselves along with their target. So if you are not careful when you use the Ultimate Nullifier, you can nullify everything, including yourself. With Abraxas having obtained the Nullifier and the Fantastic Four seemingly outmatched, Franklin and Valeria realized they had only one option: to restore the cosmic balance by resurrecting the universe's devourer of worlds, Galactus. With their celestial level cosmic powers combined, Franklin and Valeria work together to reconstitute Galactus and restore his natural state. This act came at a tremendous personal cost, as it seemed to burn out yet again Franklin's remaining reality warping abilities, which he already depleted after creating the Heroes Reborn pocket universe. The newly resurrected Galactus is able to confront Abraxas and reclaim the ultimate nullifier, but a distraction causes the weapon to fall into Reed Richards' hands. With no other option, Reed takes the risk and uses the nullifier on Abraxas, which resulted in the destruction and recreation of the entire multiverse again. As a result, the timeline was reset again, and all those killed by Abraxas were restored. That includes the Silver Surfer. Franklin Richards was yet again left without his immense reality warping abilities, which had been depleted from resurrecting Galactus. This is how the writers would keep being able to write Franklin. Anytime there would be a big event, he would be depowered, there would be a thing, he would get some powers, he'd use the powers, and then he'd be depleted again. If they needed to reset the universe, give Franklin some power, he uses it, depletes him, start all over again. He's back to being a normal kid. They would basically be forced to retire him every time they wrote about him because it just made it too easy. He was too powerful. What about the time displaced Valeria Von Doom? Franklin made sure that when all of this was going on, she got sent back to Sue's womb so that she could be reborn in the main Marvel continuity to her and Reed. She was born a second time. This time there were complications again, and Victor Von Doom was basically the midwife, but this time he was able to save her. After all of these years, Franklin was no longer alone. He's no longer a New York City lonely boy. This is why there is this theory that persists among fans that Franklin is the author, the shaper of the Marvel Universe. No one really stays dead unless you're Tony Stark's parents or Uncle Ben, and no one really ages, not since Franklin showed up. And the way he has created, destroyed, and recreated universes, and hardly any thought or a lot of effort to it, I mean, it holds a lot of water. Now, personally, my favorite, everyone's favorite Franklin Richards story is 2009 Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run and the spin-off Future Foundation. And 2015's the Fantastic Four run is basically my favorite Marvel comics. It's just damn good storytelling. Jonathan Hickman has this amazing talent for bringing the humanity to these comic books. He adds these little relatable, mundane aspects to it that other writers tend to overlook in comics. Jonathan Hickman's run on Fantastic Four and Future Foundation reshaped the perception of the Fantastic Four from just a superhero family to these insane cosmic explorers and architects of the future. Franklin Richards is central, if not essential, to this story, as his godlike reality warping powers becomes a critical element in the multiversal plot. Hickman's story is this epic long-term saga that follows Reed Richards' ambitions to solve everything by looking into alternate universes and ultimately focuses on family and legacy. Following the events of Civil War, Reed Richards creates a bridge to access alternate universes and seeks out other versions of himself to solve all of existence's problems. He doesn't realize that he's searching himself out. He just knows that he's talking to these disembodied voices, and it turns out to be other versions of himself. He finds the Council of Reeds, who have abandoned their families to pursue their goals, and joins them in their multiversal effort. However, the council is eventually annihilated by mad celestials, which drives 616 Reed to commit even further to his family. See, these Council of Reeds, not that altruistic. Yeah, they do some dirty stuff, man. Like, we're gonna go out and solve everything. We're gonna solve multiversal hunger and all this other stuff. But at the same time, they're like, part of the things we need to solve is evil doom. So they go around and they start collecting all the dooms in the multiverse that decided to be evil, and they put inhibitor collars on them, essentially lobotomizing them, and they keep them in the basement. And they also tell 616 Reed that you need to be able to really devote your entire focus onto this, the problem of everything. So you gotta ditch your family, dude. After the supposed death of Johnny Storm, the Fantastic Four's focus shifts from exploration to teaching the next generation. So Reed decides, I believe the children are the future. And he gets together all the smartest children in the world, which includes his kids, Avi, Leech, and a few others. He picks them because kids have imaginations and they're not bogged down by politics and all this stuff, and kids are the future. He forms the Future Foundation to help him solve the problem of everything. A recurring theme is the idea of legacy and passing the torch to the next generation. The story often juxtaposes Reed's detached intellectual approach with the emotional commitment of family. This is exemplified by the realization that staying with his family rather than abandoning them like the Council of Reeds did is the correct path. See, what had happened was, on Franklin's birthday, grown-up Franklin shows up from the future, wakes up kid Franklin's powers, and tells little kid Valeria that something's coming. Dr. Doom's the answer, and then dips out and goes back to a pocket universe and hangs out with his sister and his grandpa, Nathaniel Richards. And come to find out, Nathaniel Richards, Reed's dad, that was gone a lot, he left because a bunch of other Nathaniels like melded into a singularity to fight this being, this all-powerful being. And afterwards, they all developed the ability to manipulate time. Well, the TVA and Immortus found out about it. They were like, no. You can't have that. You can't have that. Only one of you can have that. So here's the thing. I'm going to call this the Great Hunt. Everyone kill each other. And so they all start chasing each other across the multiverse, different timelines, and killing each other off. Franklin figures this out. He puts all these pieces together. And when his grandpa comes back from killing off the last one, he basically gets rid of his grandpa. He's like, all of this is your fault because boys need their dad, especially my dad. My dad needed a dad. And all of those Reed Richards and the Council of Reeds, they didn't have dads because of you, because you went around killing all of their dads. If you hadn't done that, we wouldn't be in this situation right now. He and Valeria are in this pocket dimension, and this pocket dimension is supposed to protect them from this wave of destruction that's coming throughout the whole multiverse, but it doesn't really, because Franklin's own powers kind of work against him, and then they, kind of fall into this wave of destruction. We don't see them till the end. Franklin is not just Reed and Sue's son, but a fundamental force in the multiversal narrative. His immense power sets up the most epic conflicts and eventual resolutions in Hickman's story and beyond. Even at a young age, Franklin is one of the most powerful beings in the universe. He's classified as a beyond Omega level mutant, and his reality manipulation powers make him a being of immense importance and concern for cosmic entities.
For instance, later in Hickman's Secret Wars, when Norman Osborn storms the Baxter building with designs on kidnapping Franklin, Franklin actually makes real bullets appear from his toy cap gun to protect himself and younger sister Valeria.
In the final confrontation against the Mad Celestials, because the Mad Celestials are going around and conquering all these universes and forcing the inhabitants of these universes to worship them, because they now consider themselves actual gods that should be worshipped. Adult Franklin absorbs the powers of his younger self. So he has double the crazy amount of beyond Omega level classification powers that he has. It's insane. He resurrects Galactus again and makes him his own herald.
He even punches a Celestial in the head and completely obliterates it with that one punch.
But in this ultimate confrontation with the Mad Celestials, the adult Franklin restores the incapacitated Galactus to his full power, allowing them to fight the Mad Celestials together and ultimately destroy them. This shows Franklin's immense power, enabling him to affect and control cosmic beings. Franklin's ultimate importance is revealed in this climax that culminates in Secret Wars. All of Jonathan Hickman's stories are connected. Central to rebuilding the entire multiverse. During the final moments of the multiverse, in Secret Wars 2015, Franklin Richards, Reed Richards, and the Molecule Man were the only 3 beings to survive absolute total destruction. Franklin's reality warping abilities combined with the Molecule Man's unique cosmic powers and Reed Richards' intellect were essential to restoring the entire multiverse. After his death on Battleworld, the Molecule Man's power was transferred to Reed Richards during the final confrontation with Doom. The original multiverse gone, the task of recreating all of existence fell to these 3 survivors. Franklin used his godlike reality warping powers to think up the new universes. He essentially became the artist, creating the blueprint, imagining the new realities. As Franklin conceived each of the new universes, it was the Molecule Man who now had the full power of his many versions, who would infuse a piece of himself into each of it, making it real and anchoring it to the newly forming multiverse. The act of recreating the multiverse had significant consequences. The Fantastic Four effectively spent years outside of time and space traveling and restoring reality. The Earth they returned to was slightly different, with some timelines and characters being merged or slightly rewritten to fit the new continuity. See, again, Franklin is used as a plot device to clean up convoluted timelines in Marvel Comics. The process significantly drained Franklin's powers again. Upon returning to Earth, he appeared to be a regular boy again and eventually put mental blocks up on himself to hide his remaining abilities. Some cosmic entities, like the Collector, noticed the shift in the cosmic order, but for most inhabitants of Earth, it was like nothing happened. After this central role in recreating the multiverse following Secret Wars, Franklin Richards saw him suppress his own reality warping powers to hopefully live a normal life. However, his status as a mutant and the origins of his power became a bit of a point of contention within the narrative, especially in the context of the Krakoan age of X-Men. Upon the Fantastic Four's return to Earth 616, after their long journey rebuilding reality, Franklin came back as a teenager. Finally, his powers, exhausted from the massive effort, appeared to be gone again. It was later revealed, however, that Franklin had deliberately suppressed his own powers in an effort to live a more normal, ordinary childhood. This led to a period of him living as a regular human teenager, relying on his family for protection instead of his own immense cosmic abilities. With the rise of the mutant nation Krakoa, Franklin's status as one of the most powerful mutants in existence put him in the middle of X-Men politics. The X-Men invited him to join their new sovereign nation, seeing him as one of their own. Of course, his family resisted this. He's a teenager. No, you cannot leave home. No, you cannot become an expat and join the Krakoan nation. They wanted him to stay there with them. This came to a head in the X-Men Fantastic Four crossover in 2020, in which Franklin was a young teen caught between his family and his found family in the X-Men. The conflict over Franklin's allegiance and the nature of his powers was ultimately resolved with another retcon. It was revealed via telepathy when Franklin was trying to get through the gate into Krakoa and it wouldn't let him in. Professor X contacted telepathically and said, "So you were never truly a mutant." What? He had subconsciously used his reality warping powers to give him the X gene because he wanted to feel special. He wanted to be a mutant. The loss of his mutant status, coupled with his depowering, marked a significant shift in Franklin Richards' continuity, refocusing his story away from his godlike power and back towards his identity as a member of the Richards family. He was now a regular teen navigating high school, but still living with the legacy of his family and his family's incredible history. After the events of Secret Wars and his subsequent conflict with the X-Men, Franklin decided he wanted to experience normal childhood. And who could blame him after everything he's been through? He took a few steps to make sure this happened. He suppressed those powers subconsciously, and he believed them to be gone. He even altered his own genetics subconsciously to make it appear as though he was a depowered human mutate. He established those mental blocks so effective that, again, even he and everyone else around him totally believed that his powers were completely gone. Despite his desire for normalcy, Franklin built in a failsafe for the greater good. Once a year, the mental block temporarily lifts, and Franklin regains his full godlike powers and memory of his true cosmic self. During this brief period, he scans the multiverse for potential threats and intervenes subtly when necessary to prevent catastrophes such as diverting invisible asteroids that are undetectable to other systems. After his work is complete, the mental block reestablishes itself and he forgets his yearly actions until next time. While this plan is effective, it was not foolproof. In one instance, a villain named Nicholas Scratch, the son of Agatha Harkness, was aware of Franklin's annual power burst, managed to undo his actions, forcing the Fantastic Four to intervene and fix the problem the hard way. This reminded Franklin that he could not always save the world alone, even with temporary omnipotence. As Powerhouse, as he calls himself, once a year, the young Franklin Richards primarily operates as a subtle behind-the-scenes cosmic janitor, so to speak, rather than a conventional superhero facing and fighting major villains. His annual intervention is designed to fix potential cosmic catastrophes before they ever even come to fruition, often making his own work invisible to the rest of the universe. Instead of confronting threats head-on, Franklin uses his immense reality warping powers to make minor adjustments that have monumental consequences for cosmic stability. He uses a precognitive ability to foresee disasters and slightly move things to avert catastrophe. This approach avoids drawing attention to his secret yearly recovery of power and allows him to fix potential problems while still maintaining an outwardly normal teenage life. However, his work ensures the universe continues to function smoothly. Right now, that's where we're at with Franklin. He only uses his powers once a year, and then he's depowered, and he totally forgets about it, making him a totally normal teenage boy in the meantime. I think he is an incredibly interesting and crazy character, and he has so much potential, not just in the comics, but can you imagine what the MCU can do with him? Like, what can they possibly do with him in the movies? Are they going to totally nerf him? I have no idea. They did show him already bring Sue back to life. Only time will tell what the plans are for Franklin in the MCU. They basically brought a god tier level mutant into the MCU, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do with it. But that's all I got for you guys today on Franklin Richards and my Franklin Richards inspired look. Again, if you're interested in whatever I used on my visage, it is in the description below, as are some recommended reading for you on Franklin. Highly recommend. Some great stories, especially the Jonathan Hickman ones. Masterpiece. The man's a genius. But be good, guys. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and ring that notification bell so you get notified whenever I'm back with even more of this nonsense. But stay nerdy, babies. I'll see you in the next one, and keep your eyes peeled, because
Disney and Kathleen Kennedy are gonna get you!
to marvel.